Hello, this is People Doing Good for Others. I'm Gary York, and I'm honored for this opportunity to be with you. Today we'll celebrate the life of a wonderful individual who gives and shares and cares, is making a significant difference in our community. I want to thank Wilkes Communications, RiverStreet Productions, and 100.9 WIFM for this opportunity. And again, thank you very much for being part of this outreach. My featured guest today is Michael Cooper, Jr. He's a graduate of Wilkes Central High School, App State University. He's an attorney here with the McElwee firm. He's a community advocate and also an agent for hope and redemption. And good morning to you, Michael Cooper.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm a little too young to be celebrating my life, but it's a big honor to be here with you.
It's an honor to have you with us.
Thank you, sir.
Go back to family and let's get started with those who helped us be the person you are today.
You know, I'm really blessed. You know, whenever I'm around town and I see folks that I recognize, they come up to me and they talk about how wonderful a mother and father that I have, and you take that for granted sometimes that everybody hears that, but they don't. I have two of the best parents in the world. Grew up here. Mom was a school teacher. Dad worked for Lowe's Home Improvement for a long time, like a lot of people in this community did, and they're some of the best people around, and I'm certainly blessed to have had them in my life. And so yeah, I grew up here in North Wilkesboro. Mom had a small bookstore on Main Street that I grew up around, grew up reading a lot, which is probably a source of some things. So it was a good childhood. It was a good, comfortable middle-class upbringing. Wilkes County was doing very well in the 80s and early 90s when I grew up, and had a great time. Went to Wilkes Central High School, was blessed to go there, and went off to college, and here I am back, and happy to be back. Happy to be here.
You had two significant role models there at Wilkes Central, Ms. Watts and Mr. Clark.
Yeah.
Share with us the essence of these two wonderful
Well, you know,
leaders.
I had a bunch of good teachers there. I wasn't a very good student, which is surprising. But Mr. Clark was a history teacher. That was my favorite subject. It's something that I've really paid attention to ever since then. And Mrs. Watts was somebody that I had both in middle school and in high school. I used to hate her in middle school. She was really tough. I can't even remember what she taught, but then I had her again my last semester of my senior year, and I was upset because I was taking current events, and you were supposed to take that course with the football coach or some coach who'd let you skip class and not have to worry about it. And I had her, so I was disappointed that she'd make us do work, but she did, and she really challenged us to think for ourselves. You know, when you're 17 years old, it's a new experience to start thinking out. You know, there was an election going on, 2004. It was that spring, and so you were challenged to sort of figure out what your own views were, and that was a new thing for me, and that really opened myself up to what was going on in the world, and I certainly am thankful for that. So, and I've had a lot of good people in my life ever since then.
Michael Cooper, go back to your mother's bookstore.
Sure.
And reading and the importance of books. This fascination that she had. Tell us about that.
Well, you know, I used to hate it growing up. I mean, you can imagine being a kid and having a lot of books around. That's not exactly a great thing. Getting a book for Christmas or something like that, you want to watch TV. So I didn't really care about it then. It wasn't until I was older and after college that you realize, you know, you have a bookstore in the family. It's like having your own personal library that you can go into and check stuff out. But I did read a lot as a kid, read a lot of history, read a lot of biographies of you know, presidents and people like that, and it paid off in the long run. You know, at the time you really don't think too much of it, but now, you know, I've gotten back into it, and my apartment's full of books, and that seems to be something that I try to do a lot. Try to read a book as often as I can, and it really does pay off.
After App State, you had a fortune cookie that had a lot to do.
I was living in Washington, D.C. I was interning up there for a congressman and working for a nonprofit and trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And I'd gone out to dinner one night, and I opened up a fortune cookie, and it said, you'll make a good lawyer. And I was like, well, let's try that. So here I am, a few years later, and I'm worried. I don't want to go out and eat Chinese now because I'm worried if I open up a fortune cookie now, it's going to say, what were you thinking? I was wrong. Why would you listen to me? But no, here I am and practicing law back in the town that I grew up in. It's a really good experience. See a lot of people that I grew up with sometimes in court. But it's good to be back here, and it's good to be helping folks.
Tell us about the McElwee firm.
Yeah, McElwee firm is one of the oldest firms in the northwest part of the state. They were there when Lowe's began and represented Lowe's, and was really successful for that. A lot of the great companies that came out of Wilkes County, they were, Mr. McElwee, the first one, was their representation. So we've grown out of that, and it's an established firm. It's a great place to work, and I've been very blessed to get a job there. When I came back after law school, I went around town, had a yellow legal pad, and walked in the door. I don't think anybody was hiring, but I left a note, hey, here I am. I just graduated, would love to talk. And
oh my!
After a few days, they were the one I heard back from. So that's how that worked out.
Your role there now?
I'm in court every single day, and I'm supposed to be there right now. Court starts at 9, and it's about 9:30. You used to call him a trial lawyer, but now it's more just a courthouse lawyer. There aren't as many trials as there used to be, but I represent people almost every single day of the week, Monday through Friday, over there in court. You get to see a lot of interesting stuff. Sometimes you make a difference. Sometimes you wonder what the heck you're doing there and why you went to law school. But yeah.
You said, Michael Cooper, there are not as many trials. Now, share that with us, just a little bit of explanation there.
The court system's so inundated, it's so overwhelmed now. You have a big docket. I probably average half dozen clients a day in court, and so there's not a whole lot of time for trials, and there's more inclination to come up with some kind of agreement, plea a charge down or something like that, or settle a case.
Okay.
So you don't actually end up going before a judge and a jury too often and trying something out. But when you do, they're fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, you have other significant interests. I read an article you...
Sleeping's pretty good.
Is it?
Sleep. I like to eat.
You're interested, you're really an accomplished writer. Let's start right there, if you will.
Yeah.
And tell us about, what's a writer? Tell us about a writer.
Well, I could tell you about other ones. I don't know, anytime I'm writing something, I always think I'm the worst writer ever. So I think that's healthy to be skeptical of your own abilities. I can't sing, I can't dance, I'm not a very good cook, wasn't very good at sports. I played on the golf team, but wasn't that great. So God had to give me some kind of quality. So that's one things that's sort of a natural ability is to write. And so I do that when I can, do freelance stuff. The Winston-Salem Journal most often, but every now and then some magazine pieces. And it's been an interesting time in this community in the last few years, so there's a lot to write about. The last election and things like that, and the big sort of challenges that we're going through in this region of the country. So it does give me something to write about, but it's one of those things you just sort of fall into it because you didn't have anything else you could do.
The question about Wilkes County and coming back.
Right.
We need to get into that. What was that draw, if you will, about coming back here and being such an advocate, community person of great of mattering in a special way? Let's talk about coming back to Wilkes County.
I don't know if it was a concerted effort to come back. I just sort of ended up here. It's where I got a job. But then once I did, you realize there's not too many people who went off to college and came back from my generation. Most of the folks that I grew up with who went off, living Charlotte, Greensboro, Raleigh, places like that. So you sort of fall into things. There's a whole lot of need on different charitable boards and different roles of responsibility, and you sort of fall into that, being a young guy in your late 20s and then early 30s, and having some ability. You get asked to do a lot of things, and I have a problem saying no. I tend to say yes. So I said yes to you. I don't know.
Great.
We'll see if it's a
I'm
good idea.
honored to have
Yeah.
you
So,
here.
but we do face some pretty big challenges here. In the last economy, in the manufacturing economy, Wilkes did as well as anybody else. We dominated that economy. Furniture factories, textile, mirror factories, some of the, American Drew, then Lowe's Hardware, and we did pretty well. And folks found success for that. We're able to, build a family, live comfortably in the middle class. When the economy changed around the turn of the century, we lost a lot of those things, and we're having to pick ourselves back up. So I don't think you can go back to folks from the last generation and said, well, you built it before, you built all these great factories, now you have to do it again. It's on another generation, it's on my generation to figure out what we do in the future. So I'm finding my own role to play in that.
How did you find it? What is?
Like I said, you just kind of fall into it and you say yes to everything. But I think it. I think you have to learn some character traits through what you go through, and learn some resilience, and just be optimistic. These things go in cycles, and like I said, Wilkes used to be on top. We lost a lot of the economy. I lost a NASCAR race, and all those things. But that only means that we get to build it back and we get to do it again, which is very exciting. So I think you just have to be optimistic.
In one of your publications that we lost these revenue generators to corporate profit. Share that with us.
Well, I mean, I think it's a natural thing where, Lowe's Hardware started, a block away from where I work. It was a small store. And they were successful. They did good, and because they did good, they got really big and they outgrew us. And that tended to be a thing that happened all across the country, not because folks did bad, but because they did well. And we just got outgrown. So we just have to, do it again and find a way to start here and invest in ourselves, invest in small businesses. We're not going to lure, the next Lowe's Hardware is not going to come from us bringing in Amazon. Amazon's not going to come to North Wilkesboro. We have to create the next one. We have to think about what it is that we're going to be known for. And that's to
think that Washington is going to rescue us is insane.
Well, that hadn't happened in the last 10 years, and that's why people are becoming more and more desperate because they wait on big national changes and they don't happen. So they feel helpless, but they have to sort of find that power within themselves. They have to look to local government, local economic development organizations, and take these things on themselves.
You've said yes to some boards.
Yeah.
Just give me a little highlight or share.
I don't even know if I could remember them all.
Share with us.
The Wilkes County Foundation, Downtown North Wilkesboro Partnership, Habitat for Humanity, Catherine Barber Memorial Homeless Shelter. There's a few more there that I'm probably forgetting.
Hall of Fame.
Wilkes Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I'm not in it. I'm a little young for that, and I don't know if I'd ever be that lucky, but that's a board that gives money to the school system, raises money with the gala every year, inducts folks into the Hall of Fame. It's really exciting. A lot of great people have gone in, and I'd encourage folks to nominate somebody for that.
Yeah.
We'd love to have
Folks need to remember that a person possibly is not in the Hall of Fame because he or she might not have been
nominated. Exactly. That's a very good point.
The key point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about, you said it's about giving back, this Wilkes County, and I think it was the vision of those who started it to say that we're not talking only about sports, we're talking about all arenas and walks in life. So tell us about some of those criteria.
Right. Well, Wilkes has had as good a number of sports stars and celebrities and, Zach Galifianakis as anybody else. But the Hall of Fame is not just about the John Swarfords of the world. It's about, the Arnold Lakeys of the world and people who've given back, who've done well in business or things like that, but then they've served the community and given back their time and their resources. That's what really makes a difference. And that's what kids should see in the Hall of Fame and be inspired about. It's not just, I can go and I can play in the NFL or college sports or something like that, but I can, I can improve myself and I can change somebody else's life. I think that's what a real Hall of Fame is about.
Michael Cooper, Jr., when I had an opportunity to be at the Wilkes County School Board on Monday afternoon, and I looked to the back, and there is your Arnold Lakey,
Yeah, right.
Dennis Huggins, and these almost unsung heroes that are given in countless ways. That's an inspiration for me to see these individuals that serve. They have servants' hearts. You know, they play such key roles here. So I'm sure you've followed a lot of those people. Let's go back to the redemption and that article that that you sent me yesterday. I read it with every word of it.
Well, that's a long article, so you're probably up on
Well,
it. Yeah.
I was just so inspired. Tell
thank
us
you.
how do you get an idea like that, or how do you bring it to fruition, or when you get started? Just tell us about being a great writer.
Well, I wouldn't know about that last part. That was one of those things where you just write about what you know, and that was writing about that experience of coming home and being back in a place that you grew up in and you had fond memories of, and the economy is not doing as well as it used to be. So I don't know if I had that particular light bulb type of idea, but it was something that I'd been thinking about a lot. And from some of the other journalism I did, I'd worked with the guy who edited this particular magazine and pitched him the idea, and he liked it, and we took a few months and wrote it up, and he was a great editor, and I owe a lot to him. So, those things come up very randomly, but you have to really work hard at it.
You talked about redemption versus revenge.
Sure.
Will you share that with me?
Well, I think it's sort of in the last election, maybe on both sides, and sort of in our politics a lot, folks tend to blame somebody else for what happened, whether that's banks or businesses or immigrants or whoever. But we're all in this together, and I think the economy is a reflection of society. Things got tough because we sort of turned inward, and we thought about ourselves and spent a whole lot of time watching reality television, and one of the stars became the president. I think it's more about finding our own role. Nobody else is going to do this for us, and I think that's a message that that both sides should sort of find some sort of meaning in, because we do have to look out for one another, but we also have to find our own role to play in that. So I don't think our getting back to where we used to be is going to come from blaming somebody else or taking revenge out on them. It's going to be the politics of investing in ourselves and the politics of redemption. So that's sort of the thing.
So you talked about the election that maybe part of the winning formula was about revenge. Let's get them.
Sure. Yeah. I think on both sides that was part of that, and that's unhealthy. But it's right to be to want more and to want to do better and things like that. But you have to speak to the to hopes instead of fears.
Hopes instead of fears.
That's what we should do.
If I described you to a friend as an agent for hope, I think that's a great tribute. That's my description for you.
He's a good guy. He's a good average guy. Has a good jump shot. Friendly guy. But I don't know. But that's
Yeah.
I'd be honored.
Yeah. To live a redeeming life. You said.
Yeah.
You also stated in your article that there are millions of people today who need a second chance.
I think so.
Tell me, let's expand on that a little.
And I'm with them too. I grew up and I had a good time growing up and going off to college, and I was pretty wild, and I fell down, and I had people who were there to pick me up when I did, and I was lucky and fortunate enough to come out through that okay. I go into court every day and I see folks who weren't as fortunate, who were, I see folks who just like me, classmates and people like that, and maybe they didn't have somebody there for them. They came from broken homes or places like that, and so when they screwed up, it just snowballed, and you make one mistake, and then you can't find a job or something like that, and you just never get yourself back to where you need to be. So I think in part of getting Wilkes back to being on top of the economy, I think you just have to have a sense of forgiveness for a lot of the things, because a lot of folks just made mistakes, whether that was going bankrupt or getting caught in the drug epidemic or things like that. I think you just have to have a sense that that's not just a moral failing, that's on a regional scale. Like, the heartland of America has gone through a lot in the last decade. I think you have to have a sense of that and be able to build yourself back as a community, taking that into consideration. That it wasn't just a lot of personal failings. Millions of people going through things right now. So you can turn that into something powerful.
I had a lot of those years of needing a second chance, and I remember saying one night, "Dear God, please help me never live another day like I've lived these years." And I know I can't do it myself, but I know that you will help me. So, and then recovery, so much of it is about trust that someone,
Right.
like you say, when we fall, who's going to pick us up? Is there someone going to be there to pick us up? And for a lot of folks, that pickup is not, and they just don't get a second chance because we sometimes don't want to trust people. Do you find that?
No, I think that's exactly right. And you see that in the economy, and you see that in the criminal justice system. And we're going to have to do a lot of things to reform that and help people try again. A lot of people suffered something or went through something in the Great Recession and the years to come after, and they need to be able to try again and get back out there and go for it and invest in their dreams. And we ought to be able to help them. Who
is Nick Cirillo?
Nick Cirillo is a young guy in town. You should be interviewing him and not me. He's more remarkable than I am. He's really young, went off to college and decided I don't even need a degree. I think he got involved in real estate here, works for a real estate office, and he has a charitable board, Open Arms Foundation. That's another board that I'm on, doing mentorship and programs for young, disadvantaged young people in the county, in the school system. So he's a really remarkable guy.
Michael, share with us funding avenues for these nonprofits. Give us some ideas.
Well, you're one of them, and I hope after this is over with, you're so inspired that you open up your checkbook. We'll
some
talk
of
about
us,
that later.
some of us. How do we? It takes money.
It does take money, and that's one of the challenges that we face, because your generation and folks who've done so well and who've built the last economy, they're tapped out. They're giving to everybody, and they've already given so much of themselves. It's tough to go back to them and say, well, you need to give more. And one of the challenges that we face is so many people from the community have done well, have gone off, and who live in these other places, because they're not here and they're not in the phone book, we don't normally have them on the call sheet or the mailing list to ask them for money, but we've got to get creative. We've got to use social media, we've got to use the internet, and we've got to tap into those people who've gone off and become successful people in other communities and get their money and get them to invest in the place that they grew up. And so that's something I'm going to be working on in the future, and that's a particular challenge, but that's where the money is in my generation. So if we're going to get that
How'd you find Nick Cirillo?
Yeah, I think he found me. Yeah, but it's a small town. You know about 90% of the people you see around, so I got to know him once he came back, and I'm happy to help him. He's an inspiring guy.
Yeah. How about Anchor Coffee?
Anchor Coffee is a really good idea, and they're in a building really close to the old the first Lowe's Hardware, and it's a good idea, and it's going to be a challenge to try to keep them here because I think they are having an interesting experience trying to be that small business startup in North Wilkesboro, and I would challenge folks to go and not just to shop there, but to support them and try to keep them here.
Okay. What was in 2015, you were a New Leader Council Fellow. What is that?
It was a fellowship program. It's a leadership training program, and so I got involved in that and trying to do more with my own abilities in the community, and I'm blessed to do that. And I'm actually a co-chair of the organization now and recruiting our next class. And
is it a local?
It's a statewide.
Statewide?
Statewide, yeah.
And how big is it? Just give us some idea.
Well, there's when I was in it, there was about 10, and now there's going to be about 20. We've recruited a great class from all across the state, and we're very excited to be a part of that. I've had some wonderful opportunities in my life. I've had to learn from a lot of people.
I know 14 years ago when involvement in WIFM radio in Elkin.
I used to grow up listening to WIFM.
And I
I
called,
recognize your voice.
I called Linda Cheek and asked her about a list of advocates, people that, that a newcomer might want to know. And Arnold Lakey, John Matthews, you know, those people, those folks will continue to the end to be givers and carers and providers for opportunity and second chances. Those people, Arnold and John, I was with John yesterday, you know, and to know that those whose servants' hearts are always glowing and showing. So this community rewards you in special ways. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I was blessed to know a lot of those people growing up, and they made a real impact on my life. You know, I think in our culture now, we tend to view our role models as being the people that we see on TV, movie stars and folks like that, and then we're surprised when they let us down, they get caught up in some kind of scandal, as if they ever could be role models. But the ones that I've had were folks around town who were making a difference and who still do, and I try to be like them.
A lot of times we think that people who give are bombarded with it. Givers are always looking for opportunities to give, and they're looking for goodness in people. So tell us about down the road, future for Michael Cooper Jr.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I'm probably taking a nap later on today after court, so that'll be a nice future. But in terms of the county, I'm really excited about it. Because now you get to build and create and really do something now. If you lived in somewhere else like a Boone or a Winston-Salem, you really couldn't have that much impact on the direction of a community because a lot of it's so ingrained now. But now because Wilkes is going through such a transition, you get to have an impact on that. We're in this new economy, this high-tech service economy. We're not San Francisco, we're not Silicon Valley, so we're probably not going to lead in the high-tech economy, but we can lead the service economy. We can get other people's money and get them to spend money here.
And we have great schools. I want to mention
have a good
that.
school system.
We had Caitlin Nolan and Rebecca Lakey on here just 2 weeks ago, just outstanding young people. So we have the foundation for greatness that I see. And I want to thank Wilkes Communications, RiverStreet Productions for having you here and WIFM. So close with your sense of gratitude. If you've been given that second chance, close with that for us.
Well, thank
Michael
you. I'm grateful for you as well. This is not one of those places that I thought I'd be. You know, I didn't have the best grades. I wasn't the best student, and you fall into these things. But when you see a challenge and you see that things aren't necessarily happening the way that you think they ought to be, I think it's important to stand up and to do something about it.
Do something about it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm really honored to be here with you, and now I've got to get to court. So
It's a
if you wanna come with
wonderful
me, you're welcome.
experience for all of us
Thank
involved in this production. And come again. Thank you very
sir.
much, Michael.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.